Hey folks, it's me, Courtney. I'm here with my case report video. I had said that I was going to make a video about case reports, I think in like my second or third video, I don't remember. I'm now here making it kind of a death waffle. I think it might end up kind of being. So I am going to switch over to a different kind of view so you can see the case report. I've got my little clipboard that I carry around with me as I go embalm from place to place. This one's a blank one. Before printing it out, I will put in what the funeral home name is and the location, the address, stuff like that. It's just already ready to go and I just fill them in and they're all on the inner part. But I also have a tiny cheat sheet in the bottom here. And the reason for that is bottles of fluid come in 16-ounce bottles. We go in multiples of 16 ounces most of the time if you use multiple bottles. And that's my little cheat sheet right there. I am going to switch the phone over so that way you guys can see what the case report looks like, and I'll kind of go through it like a voiceover as I'm filling it out, and then that way y'all can see how I do that. Don't think I've really mentioned it other than in my first video, but I am a licensed embalmer by the Texas Funeral Service Commission. I am a licensed crematory operator by the ICCFA. I also have a mortuary science degree. It's an Associates of Applied Science in Mortuary Service. I got that at the Dallas Institute of Funeral Service in 2019. I went there 2018 to 2019, 15 months straight through. I got licensed. I passed the national board exam for embalmers, the science board, I guess you would call it. And yeah, that's just since then I keep up with my embalmer license, even though I live in Colorado now. I have not let my license lapse. Colorado, like I've said before, you don't have to be licensed when you're here. But yeah, like up here in Colorado, you don't have to be licensed to do what we do, and it's a little terrifying. So I understand why my services are mostly sought after. I'm not going to allow anything to go down, any funny business in a mortuary. I mean, sure, we can crack jokes. That's kind of how we cope with things. Most of us have a really strange sense of humor, honestly, but that's all right. I don't allow people to disrespect the decedents in any way, shape, or form. I always will say something if it means that someone's loved one will be treated with more dignity, more respect. I just can't stand it when people treat the bodies in a disrespectful way. I will not stand for it. I get told sometimes that, oh, we don't have anyone working here that has your skills. And I feel a bit honored to be able to give that to the families that choose the funeral homes that I am contracted at. Yeah, I'm going to talk about why case reports are important. The reason embalmers should keep up with case reports with each person that they take care of, you want a record. I actually scan these into my computer so they're all stored on a hard drive. I keep the physical copies. I think what I'm going to do is keep them for 5 years and then shred them. And that way they're already in the system. I have them all like categorized within the hard drive. I keep it all really organized, and I don't want to just be keeping records of case reports for years. You know how many case reports I would end up having after 5 years? I'm already, I don't even know how many invoices I've sent. I'm at like 1044, I think, something like that. So the reason we do case reports is because, like I've said in my first video, it's not a question of if you're going to get sued. It's a question of when. Some people get lucky and they never get sued, but every now and then it has been known to spike up that there's morticians getting sued. If you've seen all the stuff happening up in here in Colorado, it's the Wild West for embalmers, as I like to say. Hardly anyone is actually licensed from another state. Most people at least have a mortuary science degree. Place that I went to, they kind of refer to it as like a grinder because it's just really intense. They tell you about these case reports and they tell you that you're going to want to keep track of these because if you end up getting sued, you're going to be on the stand and you're going to be asked questions. Who knows whose fault it's going to be if you're not the one at fault for anything, yet you are the one who embalmed the body. You will be called to the stand. This is just what I've heard from people that I know in the industry that are like, yeah, I got sued. I kept really good case reports, and when I was on the stand, I read out my case report. I explained each part of it, and I was able to say this is what the person looked like when they left my care. It was not the embalmer's fault with the example I'm using and thinking of. It was the person like afterward, if they dropped a body or if like the face got messed up or who knows. You can get sued for anything. If you are able to keep really nice case reports and very detailed, and it actually helps to kind of recall. I've looked over case reports I did back in the beginning of my career. I actually was keeping copies of it, and then the place I worked was like, don't do that, we have copies. I was like, oh, good point. But now that I own my own business, I have to keep up with mine. So I've kind of got a good method going that I learned from somebody up here that I ran their crematory for a while. He was very organized in what he did, and so I kind of try to emulate that. I've noticed that that's kind of a pattern within the industry, is you emulate what works well with other people. And I give credit where it's due. So I don't have my nails done. I am an embalmer. I have these like little O'Hara nail things, little sheet nails is what they're called. I currently don't, so I'm sorry you're going to see my dry, gross hands. They're only going to get worse. Hey there. Alrighty, so here is what the case reports look like. Most embalmings take me about an hour or two if they're a standard embalming. If they are an autopsied case, it will take me a little bit longer. And then I've had some extreme cases where a person is decapitated or something, and I have to leave them on the table overnight. Left at 5 p.m. I come back the next day at 5 p.m. to check on them and finish up. I'll put it took me 24 hours, but I will put 2 hours because our Mr. Peepaw is going to be a standard case. I always get permission to embalm. I don't know why they give you an option to not have the permission, but it's there. Just mark that out. You don't want to leave anything blank, because if you do end up getting sued, you want to be able to have this and make sure no one went in after you and filled in your blank spots. Also, I don't know who would do that, but pro tip again, I used to get signed. That was when I worked this one cemetery. Funeral director would get permission from the family, call them up, ask what they did, and sometimes the families would do it during the arrangements and they would actually sign it. I, as a trade embalmer, they call me, they say, hey, we have this person, we need them embalmed. I answer whenever I'm called. The name and location of where the procedure was performed, that's going to say the name of the funeral home. Sometimes care centers, as they are often called, crematories will be off-site, and a lot of crematories will have the prep rooms set up attached to them if they are not within the funeral home. A lot of places actually are like that. One of my contracts that they have a lot of different locations, and so it's kind of nice that they have one central care center. It says mortuary right here, so you might be wondering, well, what's that about? Sometimes you're gonna perform the embalming at a certain care center, put ABC Funeral Home here, and then it's, you know, located at 124 Mort Street. This is our fake address for our care center. This will most of the time be the same, because like I prep in the basement of most places that I contract for. I will put the ABC Funeral Home, which I actually type all this out and have them ready to go on my computer. It's just already there. Sometimes the places that contract me will embalm at their care centers for other funeral homes. Well, I embalmed at this place, but it was for this other person. I always get as much information as possible. Our decedent name is going to be Mr. Peepaw. He's been picked up now. He's getting embalmed. He's had an autopsy. The Mr. Peepaw clone, and he's getting a standard embalming. I don't always know the age. I hardly ever do these days. Gonna show up once they've already done the removal. I will know the race, so we'll just say that Mr. Peepaw is white. It's a male. We're gonna say that he is emaciated. So we're gonna say that he weighs 130. I do the plus minus symbols, guesstimate, but I hardly ever see actual scales in funeral homes. I'm pretty good at eyeballing people's weight these days. Can't tell you their age. And then the date of deaths, it's the 22nd is what I wrote for the date. So I'm gonna say that he passed away 2 days ago. That'll make some more sense once we get down to this other part and I talk about the fluids I used and whatnot. Pardon. So the date of death, 20th. I also don't always know what day they died unless it's on their toe tag or something. I don't really have access to all that paperwork at the funeral homes, being a trade embalmer, so I kind of leave a bunch of this just writing UNK for unknown, guessing or whatever, because if you do end up getting sued and they pull this out on the stand, you're going to have to answer for all these things, and it's a lot easier to say, I don't know that, I'm a trade embalmer, I didn't do the removal, kind of a thing. I have removal stuff when I do my removals, and my cheat sheet for my embalming chemicals, because they go in bottles of 16. Definitely used so many bottles of Index before. The time of the removal, like I just said, I don't always know that. I just embalm for the most part, and I love it. I don't know what day he was picked up. So did he have an operation before death? I'm gonna say no. He just died on like hospice kind of thing. But some people you can put stomach, vertical incision, the type, like if you you put skull or cranial and, location, left side, you can differentiate. There is a tiny little split between those. This Mr. Peepaw gonna just be a straight prep. They do not always do an entire autopsy, and so they will just do a cranial incision, and then if they find the cause of death, they will put that and say no other indicating factors. Really just depends on the jurisdiction. I'm a licensed embalmer. I don't really do that part, so I don't know exactly why they would not do certain things. If I ever come across any medical examiners watching my videos, give me a shout. Let me know what's up. Also, feel free to sound off in the comments. I love the discussion. I will get back to you guys as soon as possible. The autopsy, we're going to say no. And also the after embalming, I've never had to put that, oh yeah, all this was done after the prep. I'm doing the prep. Again, I don't know. A lot of people just get this same case report off of Google. And then like the viscera, sometimes people that donate their organ, they get an autopsy. Sometimes they will want to keep those specimens. If it's like a really abnormal case, they died of something that's totally undetected, they may want to keep it. I have gotten the occasional body where there just is no organs with them. And it's very strange, I won't lie. But we don't have to worry about that because like I said, Mr. Peepaw, he's straight prep. Time between death and treatment. I said he died on 20th, right? We are embalming him in about 48 hours. We're going to write that down. The time between the receipt of remains and the treatment. So I don't always know that, the time or the date or the day of the week. So I just am going to put unknown. I have no idea how long he sat here. Did they pick him up immediately? Did he get to sit in the hospital morgue and some new friends before he got released to a certain funeral home? Did the family know immediately who they wanted, or was it a more sudden thing and unexpected? A lot of factors come into that. I'm just going to put unknown because I don't know. The body is going to be cold. Most people, they are in the cooler once I arrive and I get them out. And so they were refrigerated. Again, I don't know this. I always let people thaw for about an hour. I've said that before. You want the body to come back to room temperature. It takes a while, 30 minutes to an hour. You should be fine. And then some people, if you have a really high volume, you just keep it pushing. You pull them out of the cooler, put them on the table, you inject immediately. Since he's been down for about 2 days, rigor mortis pops in about 6 to 12 hours after you die. And from that 6 to 12 hours, it's going to start very softly. You'll still be able to move all of your limbs and stuff, but then about 24 hours to 48 hours in, you're going to be in a state of full rigor, and that makes it very difficult for the funeral professionals to be able to get the limbs in an appropriate position for the embalming. If you're not careful, you can break people's bones in their arms and stuff, wrists, fingers. Just kind of be careful, be a little delicate, but if someone's in full rigor, you kind of have to do what you got to do. Mr. Peepaw here, since he's been dead for about 48 hours and he's been in a cooler, he is going to have a slight case of rigor still. It's about 72 hours. At that point, you have decomposed enough that the different things that are produced upon death within the proteins that can help your muscle movement, those things fuse together. Your rigor kind of pops in. Also, fun fact, embalming fluid actually fuses those proteins. And so that's why we break the rigor, so that we can actually get the person into the repose position. And that way they are, left hand over right, or however, they're all comfy in the casket. I do have to break the rigor in people's faces sometimes. Whatever face you had when you died, it's a little terrifying when they have their eyes open and they're look like they're uncomfortable. But we're going to say that he had some, and it was only slight. We'll make a note of that down at the bottom. Moving on to the abdominal distension. See, we've got him at 6'5" and 130 pounds. So this Peepaw is emaciated. So we're going to say no. But sometimes people do get some insane abdominal distension. The gas cases usually look so much more uncomfortable for the person. I'm like, man, I can't imagine. And then of course, upon death, you start swelling with gases as you decompose. So it all just depends. Also the environment you are in. If you're at home, you die, no one's there to find you. It takes about 10 days and you are unrecognizable with your license held next to your face. But if you're found and put in a cooler, then you're totally fine. You have a lot longer. And everybody's different. Remember, it carries into death. That's kind of the point in these case reports too. You got to work with what you got. I am an embalmer. I cannot reverse decomposition. I can only keep someone in the condition that they are brought to me in. And even then, it's not a full guarantee, but I can talk more about that in another video. The purge before embalming, we're going to say yes. Peepaw, he may have been an alcoholic, who knows? So we're going to put yes, that he had a blood and mucus from mouth and nose. Because I've talked about purge before, and purge is just any liquid that comes out of the facial orifices of a decedent. Most of the time, it's like a mucusy, bloody liquid. Sometimes it's brown and it looks almost like like coffee grounds. I do remember in school, if the purge looks like coffee grounds, it most likely came from the stomach because it's like blood, and they may have had like GI bleed. That is a very common way that people die in very old age. And so he doesn't have any edema. Like I've said before, they do make edema eliminator. And then since he is emaciated, down here, we're going to talk about the different fluid I used hypothetically on Mr. Peepaw and what that stuff will do to him. I'm going to now talk about what the person looks like as they sit in front of me, but this is where it gets really detailed. The discolorations, lividity, stain, and then I mean, hey, if any of my friends from mortuary school, or if you're a mortician yourself, tell me what you put here. Doing this 5 freaking years, and I have no idea. Like, what do you put here? What do you put? I'm sorry, I just kind of ruined that, but I hate that. I hate that so much. Moving on. The lividity and the stain. He's been dead for 2 days. So he's going to have livor mortis. The blood has pooled to the dependent body areas. We're going to say posterior, your backside, because Mr. Peepaw, he has been face up on his back the whole time he's been passed. Since he's been down for a little bit, we're going to say that he's got dark fingernails. Your hands are not always like this. They don't always stay. Your arms kind of fall to the side. Your fingernails do get a little bit dark and they can stain, but there are different things you can do. Like I always squeeze really hard on the people's fingers that I embalm. My tiny little hands, I just squeeze the crap out of them and it helps get those capillaries open. Actually, we'll take some hemostats, crunch on them a little bit like that in between. Awful. There's all kinds of things you can do. Oh my. Okay, so I hate having the scribbles. I'm not sending this to anybody. This is a fake person. It's totally fine. We're gonna go lesions. We can say he had small bed sore on tailbone. I've seen them other places. Mostly it's their tailbone. We can go to the comments. The most important part, you need to detail everything you can. Scarred, a very distinct tattoo, a missing limb. If they have good dental health, they are jaundiced, emaciated. And so I'll go through what I normally would write with this hypothetical case. Emaciated, boat stomach, which is where your rib cage dips to your hip bone, and so you kind of have this boat hollowing to your stomach. If someone asked me, what does boat stomach mean? I'll be like, it means the person was emaciated and the ribs were sticking out. Good dental health, because Peepaw took care of those. He flossed twice a day. Thin skin, because he's emaciated. He's a little malnourished. We're gonna say that his rigor is slight. Gonna be easier to bend and manipulate his limbs. We already made a comment about his nails being dark, so I'm gonna say we'll clean shave. I do shave a lot of people. Up here in Colorado, people that are emaciated, they always end up having some dehydration. Their lips and their eyes will kind of shrivel. Anywhere the bone is super close to the skin, they may not have put the Calon cream that I've mentioned before. If that happens, it's okay. We can compensate for it. But the dehydration is going to be part of why the chemicals are going to be what they are. So we can leave that part done. We can move on to the actual embalming procedure. This is going to be where you write in arteries you pulled and which veins you drained. Since he's emaciated, rule of thumb, a lot of emaciated people, they end up being 6 points because they don't have enough adipose and muscle mass to let the fluid flow, their vessels and their arteries. And so people that have more adipose and more body mass, they actually embalm easier, I've noticed. So he's going to be a 6 point. So a lot of people, they would put the brachials, but I do the axillaries. Like I've said before, I try not to pull the arteries under the bicep if I don't have to. They do tend to leak. And then the femorals, the 6 points, internal jugular, and especially if I do a 6 points, every time I inject something, I'm busting the vein right after. So that way I can get drainage out of that limb. And then where I worked initially, we would put for the vein drainage, we just did a heart tap. So we'll say that his face swelled up and we thought, oh no, so we had to pop his heart. That's where you would put that. You go through the diaphragm, aim for the earlobe. As soon as you pop through, you try not to go too far. It's the right atrium. You initiate drainage. And then this part, you pull a popliteal or if the abdominal aorta. I've done that on infant cases just because their sternums are really soft. His arteries were poor condition. And then the disinfection, like you want to do all of these always, all the time, every person, every time. Always do this. Always do it. And then orifices packed, the mouth, or if it's the rectum or anything like that, you're going to want to pack those orifices just for good measure. I normally give people an AV closure and a diaper when I'm done. And so now we can move on, which is going to be what our fluids were for Mr. Peepaw. Now I have written this fucking part. I'm so sorry, guys. He's emaciated. He's got boat stomach, great teeth, dehydrated. And so what that means, we are going to give him a humectant because like embalming fluid is mixed with water. You have a 3-gallon tank for your embalming machine, and you fill that baby up. You mix your chemicals. It is attracted to water, the formaldehyde itself. When you have a humectant, that's going to help the cells draw that water and retain them and keep them. Plumps up the person. I've embalmed people that had cancer and were super emaciated. They had no definition to their bodies. They were just skeletons. But then I embalm them. I load them up with a humectant, a restorative, restoratone. There's all kinds of embalming accessory chemicals that you can purchase, and they are phenomenal. You can do like a restricted cervical. You can kind of use hemostats, stop the arteries from allowing fluid in, and you can kind of specialize on which area needs what. So if you have a combination case, so like a dehydrated top half, but their legs are just filled with fluid and they're super edematous. And so at that point, you would want to clamp off those arteries in the leg, your femorals, and then that way you're let the humectant work up top. Afterward, you can just inject the legs below where your hemostats are, and you can inject down towards the feet. And then you can use an edema eliminator or something, and that's going to really give you quite the skill set when you go into an interview and you could ask these questions of, well, what would you do in this circumstance? That literally what I just said was a question that I got asked in an interview. And I was like, oh, easy. I would do this. For Mr. Peepaw here, since he was emaciated, so what we're going to do for him, we're going to go low with our index. So we're probably using some Permaglow. Permaglow is 24, the regular. You can get it higher though. And we'll also give him some 28, some Triton Ultra. He is a larger gentleman. He is 6'5". He is only 130 pounds, but he is 6'5", so he's a big dude. So we're going to kind of want to use a little bit extra fluid just for the fact that he is a large person. He's long, he's tall. I never know what to call it. So we use 3 gallons because he's a big guy. If they're super emaciated and they're a smaller person, you're not gonna need all these. But I have, like the case I mentioned that was over 500 pounds, they end up having these multiple tanks. I have never gone past the 3rd tank of fluid, but one person that was over 500 pounds, that person ended up with 9 gallons of embalming fluid. Whole case of medicine 35. That was amazing. I've got my little cheat sheet. We're gonna say that we use 2 bottles of 24 and 2 bottles of 28 because for this type of case, that's exactly what I would use for the index. 32 for each one, which like I remember some of these, but the larger numbers I used like 17 bottles of this. Like I gotta times 17 by 16 and that's gonna give me my ounces. So yeah, it can get pretty extreme. You want to keep track of this. So if you need to do sticky notes or whatever it is, if you're doing multiple cases and you're doing like 4 embalming cases at once, I have been there. I get it. I feel you. What you would do is just keep a little sticky note or step out and get your phone out and say like, okay, this person, I pulled this artery, that artery, they looked like this, they had a stoma. You keep track of who got what. So the fluid modifier, that's going to be what I write the water conditioner. Then right there, humectant, it's already on the paper. Restorative Dodge product. I think restoratone is the Pierce equivalent. Other, we're going to say ProFlow. Help with that post-mortem staining. But with these, I always end up just using a full bottle. I've hardly ever used half. I'm a go all or go home type of gal. This is always continuous. I do not do intermittent. Quality of his drainage is going to be poor because he had those horrible arteries. You know, he's probably eaten Big Macs like me his whole life. I'm just kidding. I think it's a number 7. You go and you get that McDonald's, girl. That's what I tell myself. Cavity fluid. Like I've said, I love Petrocil 21.5. That stuff is great. I don't understand how it's like such a low index and yet it can really give you fixation. And then also Frigid has some insane cavity fluid. I'll make a thing about the fluids, my opinion of them. I'm trying out Champion. I'm excited. The quantity, we used a 16-ounce bottle. He's a small person. Some people you might need to do a whole bottle up top and a whole bottle on the bottom, but I always just do half and half. The bottle above the diaphragm, half the bottle below. I've talked about it in my other video. I think it was the one about standard embalmings. And then it was a gravity method. I am scared of using a motorized cavity injector aspirator. That's a thing where it's like, oh, there's 0 chance of clog. But why? Like, what did I need to call them and they'll tell me. They'd probably end up getting me to buy one, honestly. So an autopsy case, the viscera immersed. What that means is in my autopsy video, I was talking about how you have a a receptacle. You line it with a biohazard bag. You will immerse that viscera into that chemical that you have just made. The preservative powder is going to be that hardening compound that I mentioned as well in the autopsy video. The additional treatment you can put with the autopsy cases, sutured lacerations or Postine Ultra on face. And then like the topical stuff as well, you also could put it there if you want. It's really just however you want to fill these out, as long as you can read them and interpret them if you were to be sued, because that was the whole point of these. You got to keep up with who is who and also who got what. And this also will help you keep up with your chemical supply if you are able to enter it into like a software. Like I've said, this gentleman here, Mr. Peepaw, he is not autopsied, so he doesn't need any direct or topical stuff. With this Mr. Peepaw, he is fine. The distribution exceptions, we're gonna say that his fingernails are still dark. A lot of times that happens. It sucks. Additional treatment, we'll just put nah. It just depends on the case. And so the condition of him, good color now, because he was all pallor mortis. We'll say he is supple, if that's even how to spell that. I could be wrong. And we'll also say that he is mostly clear, because those nails didn't clear, but the rest of him did. Those ears came out real nice and lifelike and warm from within. And I always like massage people's ears, and it helps to get the blood flow through. Your ear is really weird and small, and you have to just like really get in there, use a sponge. Mostly clear, and that means the lividity and stuff. And so we'll say we did a needle injection, because that is my favorite method. I am a needle injector kind of gal. He did not have dentures or anything. I didn't have to suture because he had good dental health. Do a little bit of cotton. That kind of helps with your lips being pursed, either the top lip or the bottom lip or both. Just helps keep the lips in place. Eye closure, if I have access to eye caps, like you best believe I'm using eye caps on everybody, because they just dehydrate so much out here in Colorado. So here is the back part, the identification. I prefer this one because it just has the one generic genderless person. You know, all humans basically have this, and then if they're missing a limb, I'll just mark it out. For Mr. Peepaw, we're gonna make a note of everything that was there before. So the bed sore, the incisions I made, so I will make the little bed sore. The trocar entry, he was a 6 point, pulled both carotids, both axillaries, pulled both femorals. He was a 6 point. Do little lines like so, and then number 1 is usually embalming incisions, and then 2 is the trocar entry, and then 3 is going to be our bed sore for our emaciated peepaw. And then on this side, the description of what I've marked. So if someone has like a big tattoo, like me, I have my whole back done and my thighs and my feet, so they could just circle and put like tattoo. And if you have a Y incision on your autopsy, you would make the Y and then the little cranial, because normally what I do about halfway down, just anything that your person looks like. If they have a stoma, if they have bullet holes, if they have stab wounds or laceration, like the decapitation that I embalmed, I had to make a line because their head wasn't attached. Want to make sure that this matches up as best as you can get it. Like, look at this. I am no artist. Do the best you can. And so for mine, for Mr. Peepaw here, he got embalmed just now in my house. No, I'm kidding. Mr. Peepaw has 6 points, and so that's what I'm gonna write. Number 1 are my embalming incision. If I can spell, I-N-C. Don't worry, I sometimes can read. And then number 2 is our trocar entry, and then number 3 was our bed sore, necrotic spot. Kind of phrase it however you don't want to leave anything blank. Probably about 9 p.m. or so. I normally put the exact time. In Texas, I would be embalming at like 3 a.m. and I'd go do my case report, blah, 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 at 2:42 a.m. And then I'm not showing you guys how I do my fucking signature. That's for damn sure. And then this part, check bed sore in 3 days. You can put re-aspirate, because that's also a very common thing before dressing, because he did have some purge. Mr. Peepaw might have been an alcoholic who took great care of his teeth. This is like my notes for my people, because I send my contracts all their case reports, get back home, I scan them in, I send them with the invoices. I tell them, okay, I have some housekeeping notes on there, which they always appreciate that. Courtney says that it'll help, and then I get feedback. It's a great tip you gave on the thing. So that's how we do that, and I will switch back over and all right, folks, so that is how I do my case reports, and that is just like how I would do a standard case. When I was in mortuary school, I would always Google this stuff. Like I would look into like, oh, how do morticians do blah? So I'm hoping I can join in the death industry individuals who have, infiltrated social media, and I just want to share my experience. And I have been told that my skills are pretty sought after. I'm starting to get pretty busy, so if it takes me a while to upload videos, that's why. It's just because I've started kind of picking up. Once people find out the fact that I'm licensed and being here in Colorado, it just really ends up kind of getting the word out. Your reputation speaks for itself most of the time. Like, don't go around telling people that you're good. I am told that my skills are rare to find. I want to make sure that I can pass that along in some way, shape, or form, because the best thing about being good at what you do career-wise is that you can help others to get there. Because when my time comes and I pass away, I just hope there's more people to take my place. And I hope that there's people that care to the same degree that I care, and I hope that there's people that keep case reports and they do the ethical thing. So I appreciate you guys watching my little rambly video about case reports and how I do them, and I hope you learned something. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment. It takes me a little bit to get back to the comments, but as time allows, I will get back to you. So, oh yeah, and also represent my tattoo artist who did the majority of my tattoos that I have right now. So shout out TNT Tattoo Co. Love her. Anyway, bye folks. I'm Courtney. I'm a little creepy, and I have a new microphone.